Pleasure to extend a very warm welcome to our friend and our guest speaker, the Reverend Stephen McAfee.
Wow, there wasn't as many people here when I sat down. Nice to have you all here. So the time for dedication is always now, but I want to talk about it today in particular because this coming week, actually starting on Thursday, is in the Jewish world the tradition of Hanukkah. And it's not something a lot of Christians know much about or have celebrated, even though Jesus and all of his family and his disciples did. They did celebrate. It is, so I want to tell you just very briefly what that is, and then maybe more importantly, or at least as importantly, what maybe we could take out of that now. So, whether you have ever studied this or not, when Moses first led the people out of slavery in Egypt, and that slavery was going on for over 400 years, which means there wasn't a single person alive who ever had anybody they ever knew in their family that ever remembered not being a slave. That's kind of extraordinary. That's way longer than slavery happened here. It's way longer than a lot of places that it happened. And so he led them to freedom. And in their journey to the so-called promised land, they ended up being instructed by God to build a tabernacle. And it was a special place of worship, and more importantly, a special place of connection between the divine, that we call God, and people that they were Hebrews at the time, they became Jews later, and eventually Israelites. And so there was this place of connection where they could actually receive instruction from God, communicate with God, connect with God, at least they believed that they were. And once they finally found the promised land and got settled, then they were instructed to use the same basic design that the tabernacle had been to build a permanent temple in Jerusalem. And that was the first temple that was built in Jerusalem on the holy site. It is the same holy site now that all three Abraham faiths argue about. It's mine, and you can't use it. That whole idea is that's right where the temple is, right in the middle of all this. So that temple was this place of dedication and devotion and service to God. And then the Jews got conquered, and their enemies not only exiled them from Jerusalem, they obliterated the temple, literally physically destroyed it. There was no more temple. None. For a long time. So now, again, a long time. There's a long journey to freedom. There's a long time with no temple. And in the interim, what eventually happened, this is not in the Bible, this is in what's called the apocryphal works. It took place, it's written between the Jewish Bible when it was all finished and the New Testament before it started. There's a whole bunch of writings in between that didn't make it into the Bible, and they're called apocryphal. And this is part of the apocryphal writings. It's what's called 1st and 2nd Maccabees. It's still very available. It's actually in the Catholic Bible. You can find it in the Catholic Bible, or you can find it online. And read this story. But the very short version of the story is that a family called Maccabees led a Jewish rebellion against their enemies, and eventually were successful, and then reclaimed Jerusalem as their land, and then rebuilt the temple. And it was now the second temple in Judaism history. And this temple was enlarged and made even bigger by King Herod in the days of, guess who? Jesus. So this second temple is the one Jesus knew. So when you read in the New Testament about Jesus teaching on the steps of the temple, or going into the temple, or various things about that in the New Testament, it's the second temple that they're talking about. So when they went to dedicate this, they already had all the traditions from the first temple, all the practices of faith that they had been told to do. And one of them was, whenever there was a temple, you probably have noticed this, but in case you've been dozing off, we always light a candle at the beginning of the service here. There's always one, always, 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 always. And that's the first thing we do. In the Jewish temple, not only was there always a candle lit, it could never be extinguished. It was called Ner Tamid, the eternal flame. had to be a flame burning 24/7, 365, always, the eternal flame, to remind us of the eternal flame. It's always there. That we sometimes forget, that we sometimes can't feel, that we sometimes don't know how to find, but that's always there. You know, unity does not teach that the inner light is with you when things are going well. It doesn't teach you that the inner light is there only when you notice it. It doesn't teach that. It's there. It's a living reality.
That's right.
Yeah? Right? Amen to that, right? Yeah. So that was the idea in the Jewish temple. There always had to be this flame burning. Well, not only did there have to be a flame burning, but in those days they didn't have these situations. They had oil lamps. And the oil lamps then had a floating wick in them, and they would light that. And eventually it consumed the oil, just like the wax in these candles eventually consumed. And there was no more oil, they had to refill it. Well, you had to have this flame burning nonstop all the time. And by the time they successfully defeated their enemies and rebuilt the temple and wanted to rededicate the temple, and they had a prayer ritual they were doing to rededicate the temple, they looked to see how much oil they had less than a day's worth. And the flame had to burn forever. So they had to make more oil. Are you with me so far?
Yes.
Guess how long it took to make that sacred oil? There's a very specific, in the book of Exodus, it's described how to make it. It takes a week. They had less than a day's worth. So the dilemma they faced, and there was a serious argument about this. Do we light the candle and have it go out in the brand new temple? What does that symbolize? For a brand new temple we just want to dedicate. Here's the light of God, this is forever, but oh well, no, not today. Or do we not light it? And we dedicate the temple in darkness. What do we do? And some thought, don't do it until we have enough to keep it burning from now on. Have at least 7 days worth, and once we have that, then we can start the flame. And some said, nope, just light the flame and let it go out, and then as soon as we can get more, we'll light it again. So there was a big to-do about that. And the decision ultimately was, light the lamp, even though we have less than a day. And they lit it. And you know what happened? This is called the miracle of Hanukkah. It lasted for 8 days. And now they had plenty of oil to keep the flame burning from then on. So that's what's called the miracle of Hanukkah. That's why Hanukkah is now called the Festival of Lights. And it was a festival or a celebration that Jesus in the New Testament does observe, as do his disciples. So most of us don't anymore. But that's kind of the very shortened story of Hanukkah. Now to me, there's a lot of interesting symbolism in that. But one that I want to point out that I think might be useful now, my guess is that while we talk about the things of God here and help lift each other up, my guess is that any of you who watch the news are not real happy with the state of our world right now. And that there might be some things that are troubling or even frightening to you going on. And you might, if you have that response, I can't do anything about this. What can I do? I don't have a president here. I can't talk to people in China. I can't change any leadership position anywhere in the world of what's going on. I can't make Israel do anything. I can't do anything. So here's part of this message of Hanukkah. They knew that they wanted this light to endure, and they didn't have enough resources to do it. So their choice was don't, or do it knowing it's going to fail. They didn't do either one of those. They lit it in hope, and it endured. Whatever you have going on in your life right now, even if you're in a place where it doesn't seem like you have enough, where you don't have the strength to deal with your medical issues, where you don't have the finances to deal with your financial issues, where you don't have the emotional things to deal with your grief, where you don't have the support you need, where you don't understand what you need to be doing spiritually because nothing seems to be happening the way you want it to be happening for you spiritually. When you don't have enough and you feel like I should quit because I can't do this, do it anyway. sustains you. Your little self, your little ego self, my little Stephen me, can't deal with some of the stuff I need to deal with. But the soul that Stephen is can. So I need to pay attention to that, not the little me. And you have enough. You have enough to honor God right now. You have enough to build a temple right here with a light that never goes out right now. You have enough to do it. All you have to do is decide to do it and stop worrying about it. You are enough right now in God's eyes. You have nothing more you need to do to be enough. You are loved right now as much as you ever will be. All you have to do is start recognizing that. And whether your glass seems very full or very empty right now, that's perception on your part. The reality is there is enough. And you will endure. And the light will endure. So for me, that's part of the message of this Hanukkah teaching. And a little bit later, eventually, we're going to have a surprise special thing for you in this service, and I don't know where that's happening yet. But when it does, Linda, let us know.
Maybe.
If you don't, right. And it's another aspect of dedication, and how we demonstrate that dedication in the world. So, I'm doing a little shorter talk than usual for two reasons. One is because I need to practice restraining myself. I get enthused about sharing things with you, and I tend to go on. So, I tend to be long-winded. And so I'm going to make it a little shorter than usual so that we have time for this wonderful special surprise. But I want to, before the meditation, share a prayer with you that is not my prayer. This is the prayer of King Solomon, who in the Jewish tradition, and many others actually, was considered one of the wisest men of his age. And this is now the first temple, when the first temple was built, and that his father David started and Solomon completed. Solomon said a prayer once this temple was built. And I want to actually read you his words before the meditation. Because this is a time of dedication and rededication. By the way, Hanukkah means dedication. But I also want to do it because, as some of you know, I've been involved in this church since the late 1970s, which is longer than some of you have been alive. That's a long time. And I can tell you, having stood up here many a time, and sat out there many a time, these seats were not always full. There were many times there were less than 20 people. Look around a second. Look at what this church is doing. And there are a lot of people responsible for that. And you know who you are. And I know some of who you are, and some of them I may not know. The one I know for sure is Reverend Wanda. Under her leadership, there's a lot going on. So this dedication was Solomon's dedication or prayer for the first temple in Jerusalem. I would like you to think of it today, not historically, but as a dedication of this church today. Solomon stood before the people in front of the altar of the Lord and spread his hands toward God and said, Lord God, there is no God like you anywhere, in the heavens above or on earth below, who shows such loving faithfulness to your children, and help them to walk before you with all their hearts. You kept my servant, your servant, my father David, as you promised him, and fulfilled what you told him you would do. So now we have built this house for you. Where will God dwell on earth? The highest of heavens cannot contain you. How much less this house I have built? And nevertheless, you turn your attention to this house and your people, and you hear the cries of our hearts, and you answer our prayers. Your name is here, and you have told us you will listen to us wherever your name is present. May this be your dwelling place. May May the hearts of mankind know you live. May they live in awe of you. And when Solomon finished this prayer, he once again spoke to the assembly directly and said, "Blessed is our Lord, who has given his people everything he has promised. He fails on nothing. May the Lord God be with us as he was with our forefathers, so that our hearts may be turned toward him, so that our ways may walk in his commandments. And may these simple words of mine, with which I have implored the favor of God upon us, be near in your heart, that he will maintain your cause, that he will take your part, and that one day, all the people of the world will know the Lord is God, and there is no other." So if you join me in a little meditation for a few moments. We sit here in a holy sanctuary, in a holy assembly, as have many souls, not just in this church, but in churches and synagogues and temples around the world for thousands of years. For all the holy places, for all the holy teachers, for all the holy books, for all the holy moments, we give you our thanks. And may we stay awake to the gift of this life, to the love of your Spirit, and to the peace you can bring our hearts and minds when we anchor them in you. May this, our body, be a living temple where you dwell fully, where you are honored and heard, where you are embraced and welcomed. And may that presence in this body temple bring us the healing we need, the strength we need, the wisdom we need, and allow us to lay aside all within us that creates enmity toward one another, and give us a willing heart and a joyful spirit. May we take this moment in silence together before you to honor that presence in ourselves and in one another, because we know that presence is what makes this place holy. We know that presence is what welcomes souls who are hungry for you. And we know that presence is what gives us the ability to serve and uplift one another. Let us drink in that living water and rededicate ourselves to living as your children.
Thank you, Reverend Stephen. As always, your lessons touch us where it needs to be touched, right inside and in the heart. Thank you so much. Today we affirm that abundant blessings flow to us and through us. We are secure in the flow of giving and receiving, knowing we are but one of the countless channels of prosperity sharing a single source. Please leave your gifts in the baskets in the back of the sanctuary, or you may contribute on our website, unityfw.org. And now, if you would join me in affirming our prosperity statement. It's on the screen. Together. Divine love, through me, blesses and multiplies all that I have, all that I give, and all that I receive. I am joy-filled and grateful. And from our divinity, we always take time to give thanks for all the blessings in our lives. We have a basket that's in the lobby where you can leave your gratitude statements. Yours may be shared soon, and here's what we are grateful for today. I have taken 3 out, and let's see what we have. I am grateful for living, loving, and joy. I am grateful for all the flowering trees and flowers in so many colors with a nice green grass. That's been in there a little while, maybe. Well, this sums it up. I am grateful for people. And now, let me turn the page. We have a very, very, very special presentation to make. Yeah, this is the presentation. Please welcome Cindy Laddick and Sue Mao from the South Bend chapter of Quilts of Valor and our own Mr. Orville Hoff to the platform, please.
I have an exciting announcement for you.
At the VFW, I just blew it big time with these things, and nobody's ever accused me of being quiet. So first off, I want to say thank you so much for inviting us, having us here. It is our honor and our pleasure to recognize veterans for their service. I would like to tell you a little bit about Quilts of Valor, assuming that you don't know us. Our mission is to cover service members and veterans touched by war with comforting and healing quilts of valor. A quilt of valor is quality handmade quilt that is machined or hand-pieced and quilted. These quilts are made by volunteers across the country. Know that the volunteers truly appreciate all that you have, those of you who currently serve and who are veterans have done for our country. We do know that freedom isn't free. QOV began in 2003 when founder Catherine Roberts, a Blue Star mom, had a vivid dream of, I believe, her son sitting on the side of his cot. In her words, I saw a young man sitting on the side of his bed in the middle of the night, hunched over with his head in his hands. The permeating feeling was one of utter hopelessness and despair. I could see his war demons clustered around, trying to bring him down to an emotional gutter. Then, as if viewing a movie, I saw him in the next scene wrapped in a quilt. His entire demeanor changed from one of hopelessness and despair to one of hope and well-being. The quilt helped make this dramatic change. The message of my dream was, quilts equal healing. The first Quilts of Valor were awarded in November 2003. I'm sorry, not the second century. See, I knew I'd blow it. 2003 at Walter Reed Army Hospital. Today, Quilts of Valor is over 10,000 volunteers strong in all 50 states, and of this morning, of probably a week ago, Quilts of Valor has awarded over 362,000 quilts. Given that they didn't start counting till 2006, it's a lot more than that. I typed this out so that I won't say the wrong thing. Perhaps you're wondering why we do this. I want to share some comments from two executive directors. This is from Catherine Roberts. Today's military is composed of volunteers and has always been about having their buddies back. From those in the rear with the gear to the frontline service member, being touched by war can take many forms. Anyone who has taken the oath of enlistment has accepted the burden and risk and may be touched by war in ways that are not totally apparent. Whether in times of war or peace, we cannot know what they experience and how it affected them. The point is to honor them. And from Ann Roberts, a more recent executive director, the oath of enlistment states, I do solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. All enemies, foreign and domestic. These veterans vowed to lay down their lives for you and me, no questions asked. Now, when I let that sink in for a moment, what I take from it is they will give up their life so that mine can remain the same, so that America and what it stands for remains America, even when it seems to be a little tumultuous. I think it's the most incredible and precious gift anyone can give us. Each volunteer has his or her own reasons for doing this. Being part of QOV is my way to honor my parents, both World War II veterans. I can see when I don't talk in this thing. I can hear it. My father was in the rear with the gear in India, and my mother, the little Spitfire that she was in the Women's Army Corps, welding airplanes in Kansas. Yeah. And people think I'm tough. They need to meet her. Today, December 3rd, 2023, QOV is pleased to present a Quilt of Valor to Technical Sergeant Orville Hoff, who served in the Army during World War II from November 1943 to January 1946. Because he enlisted, he had some choice in his service assignment: infantry, combat engineer, or paratrooper. None of them sound good to me. Mr. Hoff chose the infantry and served his entire tour of duty in Italy. He had 1 week in Switzerland at the very end of his service, and he found Italy to be an interesting country, but some things you just as soon forget, like being wounded. When he came home, he took advantage of the GI Bill and attended Indiana University, a place near and dear to my heart. He met his wife, Zena, I hope I said that right, at a dance in Indianapolis. Zena had been displaced from Poland, and they married in 1951, celebrated, wonderfully, 66 years of marriage, had 2 sons, one a medical doctor and the other one in construction. Mr. Hoff has 3 grandchildren and 1 great-grandson. Most recently, Orville took an honor flight in 2015. If there's one thing I've learned about veterans while doing QOV, it's that their service does not end upon receiving their discharge papers. This is true of Mr. Hoff as well, and as I understand it, later this morning, you'll hear more about his service to Unity and to Fort Wayne. We have a folder in it with a certificate. You want to grab that? Commemorating this day, and our sincere hope, me standing behind you, is that you will use this quilt you will wrap yourself in it and know that we love you for all you've done for us. I don't know. I don't control.
Oh, that's beautiful. It's patriotic. I asked Andrew if I could.
Not yet, not yet, not yet, not yet.
You know, never.
Thank you, Sue, and thank you, Cindy. So, you heard about Orville the veteran. We wanted to take advantage of this time to thank and honor oh my gosh, I didn't know this was going to happen. Orville, I want to thank Orville, the Unity of Fort Wayne member, 71 years, right? Okay. So we went through the archives and found a video from 2016. And I want to give you a little backstory on this. Orville, as we said, has been a faithful member for 71 years. He and his beautiful wife, Zena, were here every Sunday. Orville attended every congregation meeting and sat pretty close to the front, and every time said something like, "What's our current mortgage? Do we have any plans to pay down the mortgage? When is our projection for when we're going to pay down the mortgage?" So one day, we did pay off the mortgage, and Orville was the one who informed the congregation. And we have this video, and I want you to notice the architecture of the building, because this was pre our renovation. And maybe Di will tell you soon that the company who did our renovation won an award for this work. So let's see a video, Di.
I have an exciting announcement for you. This is as much a surprise to me as it will be to you, I think. But I've been asked on behalf of the board of directors to make this announcement to you today. Do you remember the Johnny Carson show that used to be on TV? It was so popular. Most sessions, Johnny would have a top 10 list, 10 reasons why something would happen. So I have a shorter list of 3 reasons why you should be here Sunday, May 22nd. Number 3, immediately after service, there will be a very brief congregational meeting. We have some exciting financial news to share, and we want your input. My understanding is that this involves paying off the mortgage of the church. Years ago, the mortgage was over $100,000, and I think it's been paid down somewhere in the low 40s. But the board has decided to pay this off. And my understanding is that once it's paid off, this will free up somewhere in the neighborhood of $1,000 to $1,200 a month that currently is going towards the mortgage every month. So that'll be a big step for the church. And I guess one reason they asked me to make the announcement was I've always thought it would be a good idea to pay the mortgage off. And at business meetings, I was always asking how much the mortgage is. So now they're going to really pay it off. And reason number 2, you should be here Sunday, May 22nd. was on the first floor. As I remember, attendance was around 40 to 50 in those days. Over the years, I served all the positions on the Board of Trustees, treasurers, secretary, vice president, president. After a few years, they decided to buy this property. They thought it was in a good location, and they liked the idea that it was next door to a city park, which we have used in the past for picnics and things of that nature. After a few more years, this church was expanded to its present size. And I've often wondered how many people have come to Unity in 71 years. It must be quite a number. I would guess maybe 1,000 or more. I like to think that Unity is an asset to the city of Fort Wayne. We've been instrumental in many social projects, like helping people who are coming out of prison get their life back in order. And also things like Johnny Appleseed, which has been a huge success for the organization, and a lot of work too. I hope that Unity will be around for many years in the future. I still read my daily word. The reason you don't see me in church is that at age 98, I have quit driving. You can all relax because I'm not out driving around the city at that age. And I hope you all have a great time at Christmas, and I thank you very much. I'm pleased to feel like I'm part of the history of this church. Thank you very much.